Welcome to The Explainer. Today, we're going to unpack a really fascinating argument that connects mathematics, science, and even the divine, all using one simple idea, the universal set. So here's our game plan. We'll start with what a universal set is, then we'll use the hunt for prime numbers as a kind of analogy for science itself. After that, we'll see where that analogy hits a wall, and finally, we'll get to the author's big idea about one ultimate, final set for everything.
All right, first things first. We have to get our heads around this one core idea that the entire argument is built on, the universal set.
And what's so powerful about this idea is just how simple it is. The author asks us to just imagine, for a second, a universal set that's just for numbers, a single, massive collection holding every single type of number you can think of. Now, inside this giant set, you've got all these smaller, more specific collections, right? We call them subsets. You've got your natural numbers, your integers, those weird and wonderful irrational numbers like pi, and of course, the super important prime numbers. Each one is its own distinct group, just kind of living inside that one universal container. Okay, so let's see how this all connects by zooming in on just one of those little subsets, prime numbers. Because the process of actually finding them, well, that's the key to the author's entire analogy. So think about it like this. We start with this huge known set, all the natural numbers. Then we apply a specific rule, an algorithm, to sift through them all. And when we find a number that fits our definition of a prime, we pull it out and we officially add it to our much smaller, much more exclusive set of prime numbers. But here's the catch. This hunt has its limits. The source makes a great point that we're stuck with some very real constraints. Our computers can only handle so much, and our brains can't really comprehend numbers that are trillions of digits long. We can always find the next prime, sure, but we can't find them all at once. And this limitation, it's absolutely crucial for what comes next. So this is where it all clicks. This is the moment that straightforward math process becomes a really powerful metaphor for the entire adventure of human discovery. And this lays out the author's argument perfectly. They're claiming that scientific discovery works in the exact same way. We start with this huge universal set called the unknown. Then, when a scientist discovers a new law of physics or an engineer invents something totally new, what are they doing? They're pulling an element from the vast unknown and adding it to our collective, curated set we call science. Every new discovery literally expands our known world.
Now this is where things get really interesting, because the author uses this very same analogy to define the absolute limits of science, what it can and maybe can't ever do.
To make this point, the source asks what seems like a pretty simple math question. Can we look inside the set of irrational numbers, numbers like pi or the square root of 2 that go on forever and never repeat, and find a prime number hiding in there somewhere?
And the answer is a hard no. It's not that it's too difficult or that we don't have the right computers yet. It's a categorical impossibility. By definition, prime numbers are a type of integer, and irrational numbers are, by their very definition, not integers. They belong to completely separate, totally incompatible sets. And that right there is the author's big philosophical leap. Just like some math problems are impossible to solve because of the very definitions we're working with, they argue some of life's biggest questions are fundamentally unknowable to science. Questions like, what was there before the Big Bang, or what happens after we die? Maybe they aren't just in the unknown set waiting for us to find them. Maybe they belong to a completely different set that science, by its very nature, can never, ever access. So this brings us to the grand finale, the author's final and maybe most abstract argument. Here they propose one last, all-encompassing universal set that contains everything, not just the known, but the unknown and even the things beyond what science can ever ask. The author then stretches this idea even further to abstract concepts like morality. They suggest these also exist as elements inside a set, defining them based on the idea of karma, or the sum of a person's actions. For example, the author defines Lord as a human whose actions lead to extraordinary works, giving Buddha and Jesus as examples. On the flip side, they define evil as a human whose actions are destructive, and they use Osama bin Laden as an example. All of these concepts, according to the author, are just elements contained within this one final universal set.
So you have to ask, why? Why label this ultimate set, the one that contains everything known, unknown, and unknowable, with the word God? Well, the author sees this coming and connects it right back to the start of the whole analogy.
And here it is, the core of the whole thing. The word science isn't a physical object, it's a label, right? It's a name we give to the set of things we've managed to discover and understand. Well, in the exact same way, the author proposes that God is simply the label for the ultimate universal set, the one that holds science, the unknown, and even the forever unknowable. It's not a definition of a being, but a name for the whole of existence itself, a final set for everything,